Why isn't this Goku? Thank God! Hi, local main character Zep here. Aside from the first 2 episodes of Death Parade, it seems like there's no anime about darts. I mean, if you read this Reddit post, it makes it pretty clear. Redditors are still insufferable even if they socialize in public. At first glance, it's a pretty strange question to ask. Why no dart anime? Although, upon further inspection, is it really all that strange?
Like, why inquire about darts not having a Japanese pop culture icon? It's just darts. But there it is. It's just darts. A game so ubiquitous you don't question it. It's played the whole world over. Why has darts been skipped over for pretty much the history of the entire industry? And there's anime for baking bread. And it's a damn good one. So please, just hear me out. Darts is incredibly popular in Japan, with specialized electronic dart machines littering arcades, bars, and dart lounges. You can barely throw a dart without hitting a machine somewhere on the street. It's even made its way into popular video games that emulate Japanese city life for most of their runtime. Yakuza obviously has a darts minigame, and Persona 5 The Royale literally recreated the Darts Live 3 real-world darts cabinet in-game. I mean, Yakuza literally recreated a real-life man, but, that's beside the point. Also, Sega owns Darts Live. That's why this happened. Just to be clear. One might think that darts being a game reliant on individual performance without much interaction with your opponent or visual flair might be boring. One would be wrong! It's called visual metaphor and a focus on character writing and the culture around the game. The real-world sport of darts was revitalized into a spectator sport by the Professional Darts Corporation. The UK-based organization placed a focus on flair and turning players into characters, personalities to bounce off each other and for crowds to react to. They even have walkout themes like it's pro wrestling. Come on! There are multiple types of games to play with darts, a lot of them requiring strategic sequencing of shots, with slip-ups forcing players to take shots they otherwise would consider too risky. There is more than enough material for a character-focused narrative, and even if there weren't, we were still able to get some of the best sports series of all time out of a show about placing down rocks on a grid and finishing off Japanese poems from memory. There have been shows about Go, Karuta, Shogi, figure skating, swimming, a really specific kind of baseball gambling, mahjong. The point is, you can write any sport or game to be interesting if you give it the right framing. Kaiji does it, a lot of people think the first 9 volumes of Yu-Gi-Oh! Do it, and neither of those did darts! Well, even Blackjack did darts. Kind of. People have written about far more obscure sports. Tsurune is a pretty popular anime about a high schooler's traditional Japanese archery club. Kyudo, as a competition, is literally a sport where you don't interact with your opponents and try to shoot at a target with a very controlled, consistent form in the same way every time. And the show works! But there's been next to nothing for works about darts, except for using it as set dressing for when they can't make a character smoke a cigarette to seem mature and shady. Well, no works in the way of anime, at least. There are a couple of darts manga, and one specifically about plastic-tip electronic darts, as is popular in Japan. That 2020 to 2023 manga, Inamori Shiro's Double Bull, is about a close-knit group of female friends, which is cool. I'm sure they'd make really good roommates. But there is something about the mangaka's art style that does rub me the wrong way. It's porn. Okay, he does porn, alright. And then there's Enban Maze, a seedy crime drama about playing darts against a criminal organization, and it's just insane. It's just crazy all the way through. Everything I saw is just wacky. I am remiss to describe even a single detail about it because Jesus Christ. None of the series that I found ran for more than a handful of volumes and seemed to have faded into relative obscurity, especially among English-speaking audiences. While darts hasn't taken precedence in anime or manga yet, there's a third leg of media we've been forgetting. Japanese hobby toys. I mean, it makes sense. Just like the battling tops that inspired Beyblade, and the marbles that inspired B-Daman and Bakugan, games about throwing a thing at a target have existed since human beings first learned that their thumbs actually did something. Both Bandai and Takara Tomy, Japan's largest toy juggernauts, released darts-themed toy lines that died within 1 calendar year. Why do we even try, guys? Now, how could the guys who made Spinning Tops and Yo-Yo's massive series fail to make another ancient pastime into the next toy fad? Well, I guess there's only one way to find out. Starting off chronologically in 2003, where the immensely popular Darts Live machines would launch, so darts money seems to have been on the table. Bandai apparently saw this as the case too, but sought to get a piece of that pie in a different way. 1999's Beyblade was a huge hit and changed the way that hobby toys were designed from the ground up. Mini 4-wheel drive and Super B-Daman, the champions of the battle hobby genre's early days, were grand in scale, requiring large, intricate setups to create interesting gameplay. Whether that was large, expensive track layouts or different arrangements of various targets and equipment to make different games. They also had extensive customization options that allowed for a world of very granular, very personalized tuning that would require a lot of time and experimentation to find the best fit for a given player. Beyblade, on the other hand, had a small plastic arena that you could carry around by hand, and a very itemized modular customization system that was much easier to immediately grasp while still maintaining depth and personalization. The object of the game was also obvious: knock out or outspin your opponent's top. This reshaped how hobby toys were conceptualized and caused an international boom in the business. B-Daman now had a main game type with consistent rules and revamped customizations. Tamiya released Dangan Racers, a mini 4-wheel drive sister series with a focus on battle races and a smaller track. Bandai followed suit, and 2 years after Beyblade's anime rocketed the series to international mega success, conveniently the same time it takes to develop and release a toy line, they released Battle Darts, bringing customizable darts with direct head-to-head gameplay to the comfort of your own home, or anywhere you could take the target. The hexagonal target comes in at a microscopic size of approximately 20 by 24 centimeters, allowing for compact, close-distance shooting. The official rules state that you are to shoot from 150 centimeters away, with the target being 100 centimeters off the ground. With a note that this could change in the future, probably a failsafe for when people got good enough to shoot accurately from only 5 feet away from the board. The target has attachments to be hung up, stood up, or tiled together to create a larger shooting area. 3 targets tiled together like this is the play standard for official events, according to the rule sheet. The darts themselves have a rounded plastic tip that lodges itself neatly between the tiny, tightly packed pattern of flexible plastic pegs on the target's surface. This works pretty well, but allows the dart to fall out if hit by another dart. The gimmick of battle darts. Similar to a critical KO in Bakugan, if you knock an opponent's dart out of the board and land your own, your opponent does not score that dart, and you get the points that dart would have gotten, plus the amount your dart would score normally. If your dart doesn't stay on the board, neither of the dropped darts score. The darts, in turn, are designed around this purpose, being split into multiple parts like a Beyblade. They all have the same parts of a normal dart: a point, a barrel, a shaft, and a flight. Unlike normal darts, which evolved and designed to be as thin and dense as possible for accuracy, battle darts are designed to take up space for offensive and defensive purposes. In normal, conventional darts, you shoot your 3 darts, collect them, and then your opponent shoots their 3 darts and collects them. Your darts are never going to be on the board at the same time as your opponent's darts. So then, it's advantageous to be able to closely pack your darts into high-scoring zones by having them be low profile, which avoids dislodging other darts and ricochets. In battle darts, you alternatively take each shot and leave the darts on the board until both players have shot all of their darts. The goal is to dislodge other darts and take up enough space so your opponent ricochets off of your darts. While there are battle darts that come with a more familiar form factor, most darts come in all unique shapes and motifs to facilitate different gameplay and hopefully emulate the success of Beyblade. The boxes even have little characters on them, even though there was never any tie-in media I could find. Inside, you can find a collectible card packed in, because chasing only Beyblade success wasn't enough. It has a little blurb about what the dart does, its name and art, and stats. There's scores for attack level, operation level, hold level, shield level, and point level, similar to what you might see for the performance charts on other Battle Hobby toys. There's also a little points chart with pip symbols in case you wanted to play dice instead of darts, I guess. The game itself is pretty simple. You play 4 rounds where you alternate who shoots first. In a round, you and your opponent take turns throwing one of your 3 darts until you've shot them all, getting points at the end of the round for all of your darts that stayed in the board, and for all of your opponent's darts you successfully dropped. At the end of 4 rounds, you tally up your points, and the higher scoring player wins. The game, strictly speaking, works. It starts. Although, there's a few hang-ups. First of all, every part of the dart is threaded and can be easily screwed together for a stable fit. Except for the flights, which are only held in by a little clip mechanism, meaning that they fly off very easily. This is very annoying, and I wish they had a more stable connection, similar to what darts players add to their darts by using a little ring, spring, and hole punch. The clips themselves are so thin, I already had one break on me, which does not inspire confidence. Second, it is difficult, but very possible, to actually drop a dart, which is good for this small of a board. There's a risk-reward element involved. But for a 3-target setup, the better strategy seems to be aim for the other less cluttered high point regions on the board rather than risk your dart exploding aiming for another dart. This kind of dampens the battle part of battle darts. Speaking of the board layout, it's a very simplified version of a real dartboard, with alternating regions of 5, 10, and sometimes 20 points around a bullseye of 30 points at the center of the board. The outside ring of the board is a double points region, not unlike a real dartboard. This simplified board makes scorekeeping math much easier, but also makes the gameplay have a lot less going on compared to the gameplay of actual darts, which eventually directs you to aim for specific areas to test your accuracy. Normal darts usually makes you go for a very specific score as opposed to just going for a high score after a certain number of rounds. Battle darts remedies this by making your opponent's darts targets, but if there's other safer options that are worth more points, why should I bother? While we're on the topic of the targets, they have one glaring issue. No, not from that angle. While the target is semi-transparent plastic, at any other angle than front on, the pegs obscure the point values of the board. Bandai would later fix this by releasing a version of the board with colored plastic to designate the different scoring zones, which looks very classy and even comes with an electronic variant. This zhuzhed up version also has rhomboidal scoring areas in each vertex of the target that are worth 20 points each. If you join 3 of these boards together in tournament formation, however, these 3 diamonds become their own hexagon worth 50 points. There was, of course, the classic point steal gameplay, but also a new default rule set that made knocking down other darts worth 50 points across the board, which definitely makes dart placement a lot more interesting and sniping a lot more important. This version even has an accompanying comic to explain the gameplay, which is very neat. There's also a few extra game modes, like an area control game where players try to compete to hit all 3 black or all 3 white zones with their darts before their opponent does the same, with the yellow zone allowing you to throw again twice, and where hitting an opponent's color makes you pluck out your dart and your opponent's darts in the same zone, allowing for disruption. Finally, there's also a game where you play normal darts, alternating between shooting all 3 of your darts for points and removing them before passing to your opponent. A little. Read excruciatingly. boring, but it's gotta be here somewhere. These black and white style boards would be the last boards to release, as the series did not last that long, with the last release in the series coming out in December of 2003.
Even with the battle-focused gimmick of battle darts, it doesn't really do a lot to justify buying it over a normal dartboard and darts. Being able to KO your opponent's darts is fun and adds interaction to the game, but it doesn't make it feel any better than a decent darts set. The darts are aesthetically pretty cool, but feel clunky to use. Sure, they're customizable, but so are normal darts. If you want a boutique dart that feels best for you, you are spoiled for choice. From a purely tactile perspective, it just feels better to use a set of hefty, accurate, real darts than it does a bunch of funky little lightweight darts that you have to adjust to every time you swap. Battle darts is a cool experiment and it's a fun novelty to have around, but it doesn't really do anything to convince me that it's any better or more fun than a normal dartboard. Just different.
Bandai's other attempts at battle hobby and competition toys at the same time met a similar fate. The revival of their incredibly successful Hyper Yo-Yo line of import yo-yos did not emulate the first generation success, and would have to wait for their third outing to see a similar stint of popularity. Their battling vehicle series, Crush Gear, also came to a close in late 2003 despite initially high sales. Gundice, which saw a Western release as Jagan Fighters, also came and went around the same time, along with Battle X, Bun Bun Scrapper, the F-Zero Boost Dash line, and was followed by another short-lived toy, Switch Raider. To combat the popularity of Beyblade, they were throwing stuff at the wall to see what stuck, and ironically, not even darts could. This wouldn't stop their rival, Takara Tomy, the 2006 merger of toy companies Takara and Tomy, from trying again almost a decade later. Turn of the decade going into the 2010s was another booming time for battle hobby toys. Takara Tomy's Metal Fight Beyblade was in full swing, as was Bandai's third incarnation of Hyper Yo-Yo. Bandai was seeing massive success from their Donball Senki series, and were trying to expand out into miniatures games with Battle Break. Takara Tomy successfully revived the B-Daman franchise with Crossfight, B-Daman, and Bakugan. Happened. The market was lapping this stuff up, as long as that stuff wasn't named after the shape of a doorstop. Debuting in December 2010 was Kusabi, literally the Japanese word for wedge. You can see the kanji right there in the logo. It did not survive the winter. Just like a relationship with a wedge driven in it, Kusabi never stood a chance of surviving past Valentine's Day, only having to what I could find to be 9 numbered releases. Kusabi takes the concept of darts and tips it on its side, and puts it on the floor, and then forces you to play like that. Kusabi is, again, a customizable battle hobby dart, but one unlike a battle dart. But I'm sure you could tell that at a glance. These, wedges are designed to be thrown at a board from standing position, attaching themselves with a suction cup instead of a pointed tip. Yes, this means battle darts did more wedging action than the toy actually called wedges. But don't count Kusabi out just yet. You will eventually, but might as well let them go on out of morbid curiosity. The target itself is of a decent quality. It is like a lot of Nerf targets, being a cutout from a foam core sheet with one surface laminated with a shell of plastic and the other with blocks of foam for shock absorption and dampening. It's a hexagon, like battle darts, but is covered in smaller hexagons with distributed point values, with a smaller hexagon in the middle surrounded by penalty zones. It comes with a cardboard cage to keep any stray units from flying away, not unlike Beyblade arenas at the time. The Kusabi themselves come in 2 types, Striker and Sniper. Striker? Sniper? I think I'll do neither. I respect women. Sniper types are lower profile and come with a smaller suction cup than Strikers, coming in at 30mm diameter as opposed to Striker's 34mm diameter. Not that it matters, since you can swap out the suction cups. Snipers are meant to be able to sneak between other Kusabi and snipe overcrowded scoring areas. Strikers, however, have a spring-loaded barrel with usually 2 arms on opposite sides that swing out to score points. Well, they would if this gimmick ever worked properly. The spring in the barrel is either quite finicky or quite strong, meaning that you have to throw it down like this guy on the box if you want even one of the arms to deploy. And that's about as far as this series goes in terms of identifiable gimmicks. For a series cut from the cloth of B-Daman and Beyblade, the customization options are somewhat insignificant. There are 3 parts that make up every Kusabi: the head, the barrel, and the core pad. The heads are made up of a thermoplastic rubber, usually SEBS, and can act as an optional grip. They represent the character of the Kusabi and make up the first part of a combo's name, like the heads in Crossfight B-Daman or Clear Wheels in Metal Fight Beyblade. They're all based on dinosaurs, being named Tyranno, Tricera, Pachysce, Terra, Gigano, Sarcosu, and Allosaw, respectively. This is more of an aesthetic choice than anything else, because the barrel is often more effective as a grip, and even when using the head, the differences between the molds are negligible. The barrels, as said before, act as another grip, and if they're a striker-type barrel, another scoring mechanism. Barrels make up the second part of a combo's name, being their type followed by an abbreviation of their shape. They have names like Sniper F, H, C, or S, and Striker DC, DB, DH, or DB, standing for double whatever shape it is. Again, the differences aren't that meaningful, with sniper barrels being a change in ergonomics and strikers sometimes changing the length of their scoring arms, but otherwise being functionally identical. There is one release I wasn't able to procure, KB09 Allosaw TC, whose triple claw gimmick gave it another scoring arm, but I don't know if you've noticed, but that's not a new gimmick, just more of the pre-existing one. The core pads, or let's call it what it is, suction cups, only come in 2 sizes, 30mm and 34mm. The larger ones tend to stick better because of their increased surface area, but it's not that much of a difference. They're just kind of shoddy suction cups, but there is one neat design feature built into them. These raise crosshair sections, meant for you to find the center of the dart easier, which is important for scoring. And with that, we can determine every release in Kusabi is essentially the same thing. It's literally just a choice of if you want to score more points or not. There's not a limit to the amount of strikers you can have in your deck. Would you rather have $1 or $2? The rules never say you can't have $2. The rules don't say a lot of things, actually. They're contained entirely on the back of this box. Unlike the specific measurements and diagrams of battle darts, Kusabi has no exact details about how close you can shoot from, or if you can bend your knees while shooting, or anything else. There is a guide on how to shoot, but mostly for safety reasons, so the toy doesn't fly out and hit someone or something. Shooting at a target on the ground is a really strange design choice because it opens up these kinds of questions, but there are actually a few fringe benefits. The game takes up less space than a normal dartboard while playing, at least, which requires a wall to hang it up on or a surface to set it on and a blocked off line of fire between the shooter and the board. This smaller footprint makes it more portable, especially if you ignore the safety cardboard like most people do for Beyblade. Beyblade's portability and compact size helped it catch on internationally compared to its space-hogging ancestors like Mini 4-Wheel Drive and B-Daman. It clearly didn't work here, but it's a nice factor in its design. In Kusabi, you shoot from standing. I'm going to let you in on a little secret here, but people are different heights. This kind of gives taller players a handicap, but this might not be a bad thing, as it gives younger players an easier shot at the target. It's kind of a crude, but still somehow elegant handicap system. Although I imagine it makes it much harder for people who need mobility aids to throw straight down at the target, which is unfortunate. And finally, it's safer for kids. There's no chance of them hitting something else when they miss a dart, unless if there's a crazy rebound. Even with safe darts, you can still miss and knock something over. Uh-oh. And well, would you look at that, the well of good faith has run dry. I guess it's time to get to the boring, neutral, nitty-gritty, the rules explanation. Let's see. That how to play should be on the back of the box. Oh, good. It's a cute little comic again, and no, that can't be it. Let's look at the pamphlet included with all of the individual sets, and that's gotta be, nope, that is in fact it. So you and your opponent take turns shooting your 3 Kusabi. At the end, you tally up your score. You get points from each score zone the center of one of your attached darts is on, and for each score zone one of your striker's blades is touching. Unattached darts do not score. The winner is the one with the most points. So, this is really boring. I mean, it's fine for like a game that you would play once at a fair for tickets, but it's just boring for a battle hobby. Battle darts at its worst was darts. There's a modicum of fun to be had there. Beyblade is Beigoma with more input, skill, and spectacle. That's of course going to be a fun viewing and battling experience. Kusabi is kinda throwing shit at the ground and seeing what sticks. It's not terrible, it's just not a lot. You can't even knock around your opponent's Kusabi, it's penalized in the rules. Like, imagine if you were playing cornhole or bags, whichever side of the debate you land on, and you were leaned over the board. There's not a lot of fun to be had there. It lacks a lot of the joy you get from throwing as a form of play, sending something a distance. You could say it resembles Menko, a traditional Japanese game about throwing an object at another object to knock it over or away. Note that every modern reboot of Menko has flopped because it is a miserable experience akin to banging your head against a wall. Look, the Pogs bubble popped for a reason, and it wasn't despite the game being so fun. They wouldn't need to do an NFT scam if that were the case. The Kusabi game isn't deep enough to have strategy, test your skill, or have meaningful gimmicks to the toys, which, mind you, is the entire draw of the battle hobby toy genre. It has no steam in its engine to start off with, and died off even faster than Battle Darts, not even lasting a full fiscal quarter. December 2010 to February 2011. What you see is what we got. Sans a standalone target set and exactly one additional striker I couldn't find. They really marked this with the Takara Tomy Boys Gone Gone hobby branding they slapped on Beyblade, B-Daman, and other actual good toys, as if this was a real contender.
Darts, as a battle hobby toy, just like most other things in existence, has never reached the heights of Beyblade or even Bakugan. Sometimes you don't have to mess with perfection. In this case, I don't even think they're messing with perfection. I think they're messing with good enough to make it a different kind of good enough. There's a parallel here. In 1992, the Quadro dartboard was introduced and even later saw professional play. It added an additional ring to the dartboard that would quadruple the points of any dart that landed in it, alongside the normal double and triple rings. It made pro players angry because it was different and made the pace of the game entirely unfamiliar. It clustered up the board and honestly made it easier to score high-value throws, even by accident. It had a short-lived time in the spotlight before being retired. If it ain't broke, I mean, you can fix it, but who are you fixing it for? It's very difficult to revolutionize something that doesn't have any glaring flaws, and has the distinction that one of its main draws is tradition. Now, a dartboard that did see success was the electronic soft-tip dartboard. Soft-tip electronic darts took off because you could play the same core dart games, but without the threat of injury or math, which is great for children and drunk people, the main casual audience of darts. Of course, this digital format then paved the way for online functionality and even more kinds of games, but that's a type of appeal that builds over time. Electronic darts solved a core pain point, a literal one, with traditional darts. Is darts a game that would benefit from direct interaction? Maybe, in some form. The skills being tested are your consistency and accuracy in your throw, and your ability to adapt when you miss a shot. I'm sure that adapting to your opponent's throw would add some fun in too. However, I don't think that bespoke darts in fun shapes and wacky colors is going to be the breakaway element that makes that game marketable. At least not if the game you're wanting to play is darts. Darts have evolved into their current sleek and hefty forms because that's what throws best consistently in this game about precision accuracy. If all of your game pieces are different, that breaks up the flow that a lot of people find appealing about darts. Sure, it tests your ability to adapt, and that's different from normal darts, and it's interesting, but that does not mean it's super duper fun to a kid who wants to buy a dartboard, or a different kid who's really into Beyblade and wants to try more stuff like it. There would certainly be a better appetite with tie-in media, which is a bit of an ask since we've yet to get a normal darts anime, but I digress. Darts has an interesting place in media. It can be used as a symbol for maturity, not really in demeanor, but in lifestyle, or also hedonism, or debauchery. It can show detachment or callousness, literally throwing darts at a board because you deem a decision too below you. Or it could represent pure, cool skill. It can also just show that everyone is in a bar. Still, darts is universal to the cultures that indulge in it. It's like bowling or mini golf, serious to some people, but otherwise a fun distraction or questionable first date to most. It makes some sort of sense that there hasn't been a popular darts anime yet, but with the competitive scene in Japan, I imagine that changing eventually.
Instead, I have a fun new game we can play. I have a list of things that we can turn into a fun battle hobby game. All you have to do is throw a dart. Jesus Christ!